Is it cool to layer now? Is it girl of you to show your collarbones? Are we experiencing a cultural vibe shift symbolized by the death of the underlayed white t-shirt? The answer to all of these questions is maybe. And as ridiculous as it sounds, I wanted to make a fun little video talking about how these things do kind of make sense, historically, culturally, and politically. And maybe as we do it, provide an answer as to why everyone is losing their minds over Caroline Bassett Kennedy's style portrayed in Love Story. Let's just get into it. So my first hint that layering might be out in 2026 came from my YouTube friend Phoebe, and I want to give her full credit for her trend prediction that the white underlayer t-shirt was going to be out this year. And initially when she said this, I was pretty skeptical and also a little bit put out because whilst we were chatting, I was literally wearing a white underlaid t-shirt with my Christmas jumper. So I felt very uncool. But back to feeling skeptical, I think that came from the fact that layering has always been framed as a fashion hack that the it girls know how to do really well. And I feel like I've seen the layer a white t-shirt underneath your jumper hack in every TikTok that starts off like, these are the things that you can do to make yourself look chic. Or like, if I see you wearing this, I know you're fashionable. It's been the dominating style trend for years, is I think what I'm getting at. And yet the signs that this is shifting are already starting to come out. You only have to compare Gucci's AW26 runway from a few weeks ago to their previous collection to see that something has definitely changed. Now, I think this is actually a whole lot bigger than people just deciding not to wear a t-shirt underneath their jumpers. But I also think it serves as a really good example and metaphor as to how things are changing and why. And the reason I think that is because of a reel I found a while ago that explained the history of the white t-shirt and what it's historically symbolized.
The crisp white t-shirt under a sweater looks effortlessly chic, but did you know that this style actually dates back to medieval Europe and the royal idea of hygiene? In the 17th century, hygiene was a little bit different than today. People didn't bathe much. Instead, being clean meant something else. A perfectly white linen worn as an undergarment. It was meant to be worn as a layer between your skin and your actual clothes to absorb dirt and sweat. And obviously you could only keep the linen white by changing it multiple times a day, aka it was a privilege for the upper class. And if your undergarment was dirty, that meant so were you. The white linen was meant to peek out and became a fashion statement. The visible white layer inspired the fashion across Europe. Lace, cravats, open collars, all designed to show off your clean linen and your social status. Now if that sounds familiar, that's because we still do the same thing when wearing a white t-shirt under our knit sweaters. We're basically channeling royal hygiene logic from the 17th century.
There's actually a lot more history to the white t-shirt that this reel misses out, and it's really fascinating that something so simple has come to represent things like class, culture, style, and identity. And if you're interested more in the history of it, I'll link some articles below that go into it a lot more. But going back to the reel and what they highlighted, we can infer that wearing a white t-shirt once meant being clean, being high status, and being pretty wealthy. And as the first half of this decade has been completely dedicated to people being obsessed with quiet luxury, with health and cleanliness given things like the pandemic, it made sense that this was put forward as an easy fashion hack on TikTok to look like your outfits were put together, like you had your life together. But as we've mentioned, the underlayered t-shirt is now going out of style. And maybe it's a bit too obvious to explain this away by looking at the recent shift we've seen elsewhere from clean girl to messy girl. But it makes sense. Everyone's talking about how we're having a sort of course correction now, how we're going from a very repressed society into a hedonistic one. The rebirth of party culture, of people smoking, of having fun, being whimsical, are all cultural trends we've mapped on the channel already. And it kind of does make sense to symbolize this physically in fashion by baring the skin more, by not layering your outfits, by getting rid of the white t-shirt. Because sensibly layering your outfits to look put together does not show hedonism. And I think the costume designing in Love Story is such a good example of a subtle shift towards this. Because as a lot of TikTok has been saying, and as we've already mentioned on the Refashion podcast, this style does not feel too different from the quiet luxury one that everyone's been obsessing over. But it also does in key areas. And I think that distinction is really clear when you look at some of the outfits CBK is portrayed in, and imagine them with a white t-shirt underlaid instead. It totally changes the vibe of the outfit. It totally changes the sex appeal of the character. It's not just Love Story that's portraying this shift, and it's not just the white t-shirt layer that is portraying this. I actually think it's just the tip of the iceberg. If we take this hypothesis and look at the runways, then we can easily see the vibe shift. The number of sheer looks creeping back into shows, the bra as a top trend coming back, maybe even the amount of designers bringing back ruffles and lace. It's not just about layering, it's not just about v-necks, it's not just about a white t-shirt. It's about a vibe shift going on in fashion, and how, as always, it's reflecting a vibe shift happening culturally. We just have to examine what that is. And I want to link this shift to a Substack post I recently read called "Nobody's Having Sex Anymore and It's Ruining Fashion." And I recommend the entire thing, but it's this paragraph here I want to focus on in particular. It's not that minimalism or quiet luxury are inherently bad, but their cultural dominance says something. It signals a culture that's highly concerned with stability and not making a mistake instead of pleasure and risk. This is fashion responding to and capitalizing on a cultural mood that is defined by isolation, caution, and algorithmic taste. And if we take that and apply it to our theory about the death of the white t-shirt, then I think it becomes clear what that symbolizes in our state of mind changing. I've already spoken about the no trainers, only heels trend. All anyone can say is wide leg is out, skinny jeans are in. People have rediscovered the bodycon dress. And based on what I've seen, I think collarbones are going to be put forward as an it accessory for 2026. And a lot of these examples feel just as firmly planted in the skinniness trend than they do the sexiness trend. But it's definitely a flip from the last few years where baggy clothing was in, wide leg jeans were in, trainers and Adidas and trench coats were the dominating style. And I think this is where it gets interesting culturally.
Between the Oscars and Fashion Month, there was a serious lack of sex appeal. Not for lack of trying. Everyone is trying to be sexy, but it is not translated. And it's really got me thinking, like, what is sexy in 2026? Because it's not this. Over the last decade, conservatism has been slowly chipping away at culture. And I think one of the saddest things that it's taken away from society in general is a sense of freedom. Your freedom is not a guarantee anymore. And maybe as arbitrary as this sounds, the effect it has on fashion is very palpable. You can see this forced sexiness that's happening. Everyone is really trying hard to look sexy. This was something that really stood out to me on the Gucci runway. The walks were just non-believable. I think there has to be a direct correlation to this sexless, no libido ass having attire on the red carpets and during Fashion Month, and conservatism making us yearn for times that were more free. You felt more freedom. And I can already hear the comments, but it really is this deep. Fashion is a direct mirror to culture. And when you're holding up the mirror to this negative, sexy aura, it means something.
I think there is definitely an element going on here that showing more skin, tighter clothing makes sense given our current far-right political climate. The shift on the runway from corporate power dressing to lace and ruffles and sheerness and sexiness has very obvious connotations about gender politics. And to bring it back to the CBK Love Story obsession for a second, because I still don't quite understand, I've seen a lot of discourse online suggesting that people's fascination is coming less from her style than her relationship and the desire to attract a man like Kennedy. And that's maybe more of a drive for people to want to dress like this than it is just loving her clothes. Because as I said, there's not that much difference here between her style and quiet luxury, just maybe a more tangible sexiness. And I think this underlying tension about romance and relationships and sex is coming through in a lot of society, not just in our wardrobes and how we're choosing to physically manifest it. The "is having a boyfriend embarrassing now" article completely divided the internet about relationship politics. But you also have figures like Zendaya and Olivia Dean dominating the culture right now, who are kind of romanticizing romance. And I've spoken about this on the channel before, but Data But Make It Fashion's prediction that romance is back in 2026 has been on my mind whenever I think about this topic. Yes, we're seeing this manifest itself on the runway very clearly, but also in our wider culture, in people's new obsession to go out and try new things and stop living their lives online. Everything feels a little bit less corporate and a little bit more romantic and daring. And as always, I think it's super interesting that we're seeing these conversations about very real, very serious topics playing out in culture through our wardrobes and what we're seeing on the runway, even in something as subtle as no longer layering a white shirt underneath our jumpers. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one and I'm the only one seeing these ties, but I love talking about it. And I hope this was an interesting topic and it starts you guys thinking and we have a discussion in the comments. Anyway, I think I'm going to go watch Love Story and make up my mind about whether it's worth a watch or not. I know you guys have both recommended it to me and told me not to go near it with a 10-foot pole. So mixed signals and I will have to decide for myself, I guess. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this one and I catch you in the next one. Okay, bye everybody.